Welcome back to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK, and today I am sharing with you how to crochet this chevron Christmas tree skirt. Now you can make this skirt in any size you need to fit your very own Christmas tree, and I'm going to give you the measurements to make a 20-inch for a tabletop tree, a 42-inch for a 4 to a 6 foot tree, a 48-inch for a 7-foot tree, up to a 56-inch tree skirt for those absolutely mammoth trees if you're lucky enough to have the space for one of them. Now before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so you never miss out on another one of my crochet patterns or tutorials again. So to create the tree skirt for a 4 to 6 foot tree, if you're working it in two colours like I have for colour A, I'm using red, and colour A you're going to need about 600 metres, and then for colour B, which I've used white, you're going to need between 350 to 400 metres. Now this is Paintbox Yarns Simply Aran. You know I absolutely love it and I use it in a lot of my kind of everyday projects because it really is quite hard wearing and washes really well. It's a size 4 yarn, so it's the same as a US worsted weight yarn. They're about 100 gram weight with 184 meters of yarn on them. I used just over 3-4 balls of the red color and 3 of the red and 3 of the white. So I've used not a bright red this time. This is Pillar Red, which I think, yeah, shade number 214, and then I've paired it with a paper white, which is a really bright white, shade number 200. I've matched the hook size for the recommended hook size for this pattern, so I've used a 5mm crochet hook. Now obviously you may want to create a different size tree skirt to the one that I'm creating, so I'm going to make sure that you fully understand the pattern repeat, and then you can just keep on going and to create the size that you want to make. It's a really nice, easy repeat, as most chevrons are, and this chevron increases every 2 rounds, and then you do 1 round with no increase to help it lay flat. So I've also got, of course, a darning needle and a pair of scissors. We're not going to worry about the ends just yet. So grab your 5mm hook and all your yarn and let's get started. So I'm starting with my colour A, which is Pillar Red. You can opt to change colours more frequently or less frequently than I will. I'm going to work the first 4 rows and then change to my second colour. So once you have a slip knot on your hook, we're going to start with a chain of 25, and this is the same for all sizes and is allowing up to a generously sized chunk on your Christmas tree, be it real or not so real. So we're going to start with a chain of 25. That's 1, 2, 3 and 25. When you have your chain of 25, we're going to start by working into the second chain from hook. This loop doesn't count. There's our first, and we're just going to go underneath 1 loop of our chain, and we're going to be working a US single crochet, which is the same as a UK double crochet. So we insert our hook, yarn over, bring our loop up, yarn over and pull through 2. And we're going to work 1 US single crochet into each chain across, back to our slip knot or the end of our chain, and our stitch count at the end of row 1 is going to be 24 single crochets. So continue across, working 1 single crochet into each of your chains, and I'll meet you at the end of row 1. So at the end of row 1 you should have a stitch count of 24 single crochets. Going into row 2, we're starting making a chain of 3. So the starting chain of 3 counts as our first double crochet, US double crochet, and that's the same for each row that we work. It always counts as our first stitch. Once we've made our chain 3, this does count as our first stitch, and we're going to start by working a second double crochet into that same stitch. So the chain 3 counts as 1. We're going to yarn over and insert, yarn over, bring a loop up, so we have 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Now all our rows are going to start the same by working our chain 3 and a double crochet into that same stitch as our first chain. We're then going to work 2 US double crochets into the next and each stitch across. So we yarn over and insert, bring our loop up, pull through 2, pull through 2, and then we yarn over to reinsert into the same stitch to work a second US double crochet. So we're essentially going to double our stitch count from row 1. So we've got 2 in that stitch, we put another 2 into the next. So that's 1, and reinsert for the second. Work number 1, and then reinsert for the second. So continue across, working 2 US double crochets into each stitch across, and your stitch count at the end of row 2 will be 48. Continue across and I will meet you for row 3. So I'm just working my final second double crochet into that last stitch, and I wanted to show you how mine looks right now because it should be twiddly. This is actually called hyperbolic crochet, where you're increasing way too much and it causes it to curl. However, what we have made is actually an unjoined circle. So don't worry if yours has twiddled, as mine does if I pick it up. It's literally what we want it to do, but when you lay it flat, it becomes a circle. So please don't be concerned if yours has also coiled. At the end of row 2, you should have a stitch count of 48 double crochets, and it'll be a little bit twiddly. Going into row 3, we're going to start with our chain of 3, and of course we work that double crochet into the same stitch as our chain 3. So we look like we have 2 stitches in there. We are then going to skip the next stitch and work 1 double crochet into the next. So we skip 1, yarn over, ready to work 1 double crochet into the next. So you should have an unworked stitch in between. Into the next stitch, we're going to work 1 double crochet, a chain 2, and a further double crochet into that same stitch again. So reinserting to work a second double crochet, just like a very big V-stitch. We then work 1 double crochet into the next. So we've got a little group of 4 stitches here. So we've got double crochet, chain 2, double crochet into the next, and then another double crochet. We're then going to skip the next stitch and continue to repeat that across. So we skip 1, work 1 double crochet, into the next one we work double crochet, chain 2, and a further double crochet into the same stitch, and then we work double crochet into the next. So again, we've got that block of 4 stitches with that chain 2 space in between. So we skip the next, double crochet into the next, chain 2, double crochet back into the same stitch again, and then we work a further double crochet into the next. We're going to repeat this all the way across. So we skip the next, work 1 double crochet, chain 2, double crochet into the same again, before working that other double crochet next to that open V-stitch. And what's happening is we're placing our peaks ready for our chevron pattern. So continue to repeat that across. You skip 1, work 1 double crochet, into the next you work a double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, followed by that double crochet into the next before repeating it all again. So skip the next, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet into the same, and then we double crochet into the next. Continue to repeat that all the way around, and I will meet you our last 3 stitches. I'm just finishing off my last repeat, and I have 3 stitches remaining. At this point you should have 11 chain 2 spaces. So we have 1, oh dear, I can't lay it flat because it's nearly impossible. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and number 11. So those chain 2 spaces are going to be the peaks of our chevron, and when you see it look so tiny, it's quite amazing how big it gets. When we have just these 3 stitches remaining, we're going to skip the next stitch and work 1 double crochet into each of the last 2. So one goes into that stitch and then the other one goes into the top of your turning chain of 3. So make sure it goes right into the top. Ideally aim to pick up 2 loops of your turning chain, and it should look a little bit like that. So at the end of row 3, alongside your 11 chain 2 spaces, you should also have a stitch count of 48 double crochets. Going into row 4, which is our final row in this colour, we're going to start with a chain of 3. Now this row is going to be our increase row, so we're going to start by working a second double crochet into the same as our chain 3, so it looks like we have 2 stitches. We skip the next before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 2. So if we skip this one, we're going to work 1 double crochet into the next 2 stitches before our chain 2 space. So there's 1 and 2. So we're carrying on that little space there. Into our chain 2 space, we are going to work 2 double crochets. So that's 1 and 2, all into that same chain 2 space. We chain 2 and work a further 2 double crochets right into that same chain 2 space. So effectively we're carrying on our peak right above where we were before. We are then going to work 1 double crochet into the next. You have to be really careful that you don't work over the next stitch to work into. So there's the post and the stitch is right above. So we're going to work a double crochet into the next, and we're going to skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into the next. We're then back to our chain 2 space where we work our increase again. So we've skipped 2, work 1 double crochet into the next, and we're back to our chain 2 space. We're then going to work 2 double crochets into the peak, so that's 2. We chain 2 before working a further 2 double crochets into the same chain 2 space. So we should be looking a little bit like that. We've worked our increase of 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, double crochet into the next, skip 2, double crochet into the next before our chain 2 space where we repeat 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. And we're going to repeat this all the way across. So we work 1 double crochet into the next. We skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into the next, and into our peak, or where our chain 2 space is, we're working 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and a further 2 double crochets. We then work 1 double crochet into the next, and we're back to the beginning of our repeat, skipping those first 2 stitches. So continue to repeat that across, skipping the first 2 stitches, working 1 double crochet into the next, followed by 2 double crochets into the chain 2 space, a further chain 2, and a further 2 double crochets before working 1 double crochet into the next. You should then have 2 stitches left ready to work your next repeat. Continue that across, and I will meet you for the last 3 stitches of row 4. So once you have worked that around, you should really start to see those peaks and troughs forming. Once you've got just 3 stitches remaining, we're going to work 1 double crochet into the next, skip the next stitch, and working into the top of our turning chain, we're going to work 2 double crochets. So that's 1 and 2, just to make sure I made that clear as possible. So when you had just 3 stitches remaining, work 1 double crochet into the next, skip the next stitch, which is barely visible, and then work 2 double crochets into the last. You should still have a nice looking circle at this present moment in time, and your stitch count at the end of row 4, you're going to now have 72 double crochets and still have your 11 chain 2 spaces. Those 11 chain 2 spaces are never going to change. That's not going to increase. The only thing that will now increase is your stitch count between your peaks. So your chain 2 space is your peak, and this space here between them is the trough, as I refer to it. So we get peaks and troughs all the way around. Now I'm going to change colour at the end of this row, and the way that I'm going to do it is it's one of my favourite ways of doing it, and it makes it easier to do the edges. So I'm going to undo my last stitch and just work that second double crochet into the top of that turning chain, but I pause halfway through the stitch, grab my second colour and just place it over the hook and complete that stitch in my new colour, pulling down on the working yarn. I'm not going to fasten this off. I'm going to carry this up all the way the side of my project because I want to minimise the number of ends that I have to weave in. So once you've changed colour, we're going to continue on to row 5, and that's in my colour of B, and we're working a second increase row. So we begin with our chain of 3. I can work over my white end if I want to, and we're going to work a second double crochet into the top of the same stitch as our chain 3. This time we're going to skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 2. So we're skipping 2 before working 1 double crochet into the next 2 stitches. That brings us to our chain 2 space where we're going to work 2 double crochets. So that's 2, our chain 2 for our peak, and a further 2 double crochets into that same chain 2 space. We're then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. That's 1 and 2. We then skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into the next 2 stitches, which of course brings us back to our peak where we work 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and a further 2 double crochets. We work 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 to complete our repeat, and you can already see that our peaks are stacking up on top of us, and now so are our troughs. We then skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 back to our next chain 2 space, where we increase working 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and a further 2 double crochets into that chain 2 space. We're going to repeat this working 2 double crochets into the next 2 stitches before skipping the next 2 stitches again. And we're going to repeat this all the way across to our last, all the way across to our last 3 stitches, just as we did before. So we skip 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 2. We then work 2 double crochets, a chain 2, followed by a further 2 double crochets. We then work 1 double crochet into the next 2 stitches, work 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and we're going to repeat that all the way around. I think it looks like frosting when you do this round initially. So continue across, skipping the next 2, work 1 double crochet into each of the next 2, into your chain, lots of 2s, into your chain 2 space, you're working 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet, and then we work 1 double crochet into the next 2 before repeating it all the way across. I'm going to meet you when you have just the last 4 stitches this time, because your repeat is going to end after working those 2 stitches. So continue around and I'll meet you for the rest of row 5. Once you have worked around until you have just 4 stitches remaining, we're going to work 1 double crochet into the next, so it's like an extra stitch. We skip the next 2, and then we work 2 double crochets into the top, oh squeaky, at the top of our turning chain. And that is our increase row. Again, we should still be, oh, I'm caught on something. Oh, still caught. We should still have quite a nice flat circle. At the end of row 5, you should now have 94 double crochets and still have your 11 chain 2 spaces. Now going into row 6, this is our no increase row. We start with our chain of 3. We're going to work 1 double crochet into the same stitch as our chain 3. We then skip the next 2 stitches, and then we're going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. That will take us all the way up. Oh, skip 2, Fiona. 1, 2, 1, 2, and then 1 double crochet into each of the next 4. 2, 3, and 4. That brings us to our chain 2 space, and because we're not increasing this time, we just work 1 double crochet, chain 2, and a further double crochet into the same chain 2 space. We're then going to work 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. That's 1, 2, and 3. It's going to show that you have an increase row, and then a no increase row. Just so you can get more of an idea of the pattern repeat. We're then going to skip the next 2 stitches before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches again. 2 and 3. We then work into that chain 2 space, but this time we're placing 1 double crochet, a chain 2, and a further single double crochet. I shouldn't say that, it sounds too close to the American. 1 other double crochet on its own, so we're not increasing in our peaks this time. We then work 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 before we skip the next 2 stitches. So 1, 2, and we're repeating this all the way around till we have just 4 stitches remaining as normal. So we have 1 double crochet into each of the next 3. We work 1 double crochet, chain 2, and another double crochet into that peak this time, before working 1 double crochet into each of the next 3. These 2 stitches that we're skipping each time creates the trough of our chevron. So skip 2 and then work 1 double crochet into each of the next 3 again. Continue around until you have just 4 stitches remaining, and I'll meet you for the end of row 6. Just working that 3rd and final stitch from the repeat, and I have 4 stitches remaining. We're going to work 1 double crochet into the next, skip the next 2 stitches before working 2 double crochets into the top of our turning chain, and 2. So once you've finished row 6, you can of course change to your main or back to colour A. I'm just going to complete half the stitch and pick up my red, making sure that it's not too tight and not going to distort the side. Ready to continue into row 7. Now that is actually the complete pattern you need to be able to make whatever tree skirt size you want to make. From row 7, you're going to continue to repeat rows 4 through to 6 until you achieve the size that you want. So for a 20-inch, like a tabletop tree skirt, you'd need to do a total of 14 rows. If you're looking to do a tree skirt for a 4 to 6 foot tree, I'd recommend doing 30 rows altogether. If you're looking for a 7-foot tree, aim for a 48-inch tree skirt, and that'll be a total of 36 rows. And then for those really massive 8-foot plus trees, I recommend doing about 42 rows, which would give you a tree skirt of about 56 inches. Of course, you can finish the number of rows once you're happy if you're going to test it with your tree, but whatever you do, don't fasten off once you've reached the length that you want, because we're going to continue off onto our edging. So make the tree skirt the size that you want, repeating rows 4 through to 6, and I'll meet you shortly for our edging. So once you have created a tree skirt as big as you would like it to be, mine is kind of in between sizes because I'm not sure which tree I'm going to put it on, because I am one of those people that have more than one tree in their home. We need to continue on to the edging. So wherever you've ended, whichever colour you've ended up with on your final repeat, we are going to work all the way up the side of our tree skirt around the top, and then back down, gosh, where's it gone? Back down the other edge so that we edge all the edges. And yes, I am going to have red against my white, etc., but it's just for an edging, because then we can add on our ties. Now this is completely optional. I have carried my yarn up the side, so I need to cover that really. It doesn't bother me having the red going against the white. I think it's going to look quite striking actually. I've already done a chain just to keep that secure. So we're not going to be working back across our row back up to our peak. Instead, we're rotating it to work down the edge back towards the top of the tree skirt. We're going to start with a chain of 1, which of course does not count as a stitch, and we're going to be working 2 single crochets per row. Because these are US double crochets, we're going to work 2 US single crochets into each row all the way up. So I'm just going to go back into where that last stitch was worked from the other side to put 1 in there, and then 1 kind of in the middle of my stitch, and repeat that all the way. So there's the bottom of my row. So I'm putting 1 in there, and then 1 through the middle of this stitch here, and then I'm going to go for the end of that row and 1 through the middle, making sure of course that I cover any colour that I've carried as well. So I've got an end there as well, just to confuse things. There we go. So that's number 2. So we're going to repeat this all the way up. I'm covering up my colour changes and of course carrying my ends, because you know me well, I hate to weave them. And we're working in the end of the row, the middle of the row, end of the row, middle of the row, aiming to work 2 US single crochets, the same as a UK double crochet, all the way up. So we're going to continue all the way up, working 2 US single crochets per row, all the way up to the top of the opening of our tree skirt, and I'll meet you up here, because I don't know how many rows you've got. I've got quite a few. So continue to work up, placing those two singles for each row that you've worked. Try and grab 2 loops of each of these rows here to keep it nice and neat. And I'll meet you for our next section, which is going to be working across the top before we then work back down the other side, save us having any more ends to work in. I'll see you in a moment. Once we've worked all the way up to that very top of our tree skirt, we're going to be working into the other side of our beginning chain, and we're simply just going to work 1 single crochet into each of our beginning chains around. I would show you, but this colour does not show up very easily on camera, but you can see it's almost, move that out of the way, you'll be able to see better. We're working into the other side of our beginning chain. God, this thing's so huge. We're working into the beginning of our starting chain. So you're looking for work opposite those first single crochets you made way back when we started our projects. And we're just working all the way around to the other edge of our tree skirt. So we're just literally curving off and continuing around, working 1 single crochet into the other side of our beginning chain. So it helps neaten off the edge of our project at the same time as getting us back over to the other side without having to fasten off. A little bit nifty. Continue around to the beginning, which is where you'll find, well, if you're on the same row count as me, you'll find your original starting chain, and that's where we're going to start working back down the other side to edge the other side of our tree skirt. Just working into my final beginning chain, and we should be back to the other edge, which has now nicely wrapped itself up. And the best reason for doing this all the way around is that all your stitches are going to be facing on the same side of your project. So once you've worked into that last other side of your chain, we're going to work, where's that end gone? I'm going to weave that in as we go. Going to work back down the other side. The same as we did, working 2 US single crochets into each of our rows and the row ends, if that makes sense. So you're working 2 stitches per row. So continue to repeat that all the way down, working 2 single crochets per row, all the way down to the bottom. Remember to work 2 into this last one, fasten off, and then you can weave in all of the ends if you have any remaining on your project. And then we're going to be adding on our ties, and that the number of ties you need will depend on the total length or width of your tree skirt. I'll see you in a few moments once you've worked all the way back down, fastened off and woven your ends in. Once you've got all your ends woven on, you're going to have to pick a colour if you've used more than one to make your ties. I'm continuing with the red theme because, you know, it's taking over the world. And we're going to be making some ties to join our edges when this is around our tree. Now, this is entirely optional. Some people will be happy just to kind of place it and hope it doesn't move. I want some security that if I place a gift on top of it, if it's under the tree, it's not going to pull the skirt around. So I'm going to create some ties, and I'm going to start at the very top edge. I have the right side of my project facing, meaning that I can see my stitches. And you can either join with having a slip knot on your hook. It's not my preferred way of doing it, but you can. And I'm going to just rotate it so I have the edge facing me, and so it's a bit easier on the eye as well. So I'm beginning with that first single crochet that we made into our beginning chain. Just going to insert my hook through there, and I'm just going to join on as normal and just pull that through. The tail is at the back, so it's on the inside of my project. And all we have to do for our ties, very simply, we're going to make a chain of 40. Once that yarn is attached, you can make your chain of 40. And once you've made that chain of 40, it's quite a sizable chain. Remember, they are going to meet. All I'm going to do is fasten off, pull through on that last chain. So obviously it looks like it's 39. And then I'm going to weave both these ends in. Now it's up to you how many of these ties you use. My recommendation is that you kind of count down. You can either do every 10 rows, every 5 rows. So I've done one right at the top. I don't ever count those first 4. So you could put one here and then one there, or you could go a little bit further down and space them out. That's why I say it's definitely up to you how many you place around. So you can continue to add your, I'm probably going to go here. So that would be 2, 4, 6, 8, every 10 rows for me. Obviously, if you've got quite a small, your tree skirt isn't quite as large as mine, you may not need to leave quite as many between them. You can do them more frequently. You're just simply going to pull the yarn through, make your chain of 40, and then fasten off. So repeat that down, placing as many or as few as you want. I won't do one at the absolute bottom personally because that might have to flare open, but I'll probably just place a couple more just so I can make it nice and secure. So go ahead and place your ties down the side, and then I'll meet you back for the other side because we need to make sure we still have that right side facing. So I've added 3 ties on one side, and I'm going to match them onto the other side, and instead of just flipping it over, I'm going to rotate. So once again, I still have the right side of my project facing, and we want them to be in the same spot as our other side, which is why I gave a count. I've done every 10 rows, and we're just going to repeat the process on the other side, joining our yarn and working those rows of, working a chain of 40 for each tie. Now I'm going to say a massive thank you for joining me to make your very own, your Christmas crochet tree skirt. I can't wait to see your finished pictures of everyone gathering around your Christmas tree and it kind of being a bit more centre stage because you've handmade your very own tree skirt. Thank you as always for joining me, and I will see you in the next video.